Hey guys, Baird here with Spec of Tech. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about two beastly subwoofers that I've been really anxious to talk to you guys about, but I had to kind of sit on them for the past couple of months, so I've been doing some testing and just using them in my own home theater system. And guys, they truly are impressive. They have some fantastic performance. The subwoofers that I'm talking about are the Tonewinner D8000 Pro, which is a dual 15-inch ported subwoofer, and the D9000, which is an 18-inch ported subwoofer. I've actually been getting a lot of questions about these subwoofers because they have been in the background of some of my videos. I even used it for a stand, or used one of them for a stand for my SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf videos. So I was getting a lot of questions about them. So today's video is just going to be an overview of both of these subwoofers. So I'm going to give you guys some of the information, some of the specs, and I'm going to tell you about my first impressions on the performance of these subwoofers, because the performance is something that really stands out about both of these subwoofers. But in the coming weeks, I will be doing a review on both of them, and I will show you guys the ROO, or the Room EQ Wizard, measurements of these subwoofers in my room. The performance is something that really stands out, like I said. So make sure that you stay tuned for those videos, but let's get right into the specs of both of these subwoofers. So first, let's cover the Tonewinner D8000 Pro, which is the dual 15-inch ported subwoofer here. So first of all, obviously it has two 15-inch drivers. These drivers are the exact same drivers that are used in the D6000. There's just two of them here. The claimed frequency range is 12 Hertz to 220 Hertz. The amplifier is putting out 1500 watts RMS at 3 ohms and 8000 watts peak. Take that with a grain of salt, guys. That 8000 watts peak is not going to be something that is sustainable. It's going to be just quick bursts only. So as I'm sure you guys can see, it is a ported enclosure with those 6 ports, but you can run the subwoofer in sealed mode. So they do include port bungs for you to plug those ports, and then you can either use the LCD display on the back or the app to change the subwoofer into sealed mode. The dimensions for the D8000 Pro, when it's laid on its side, you're looking at 36.6 inches wide, 24 inches high, and 25.5 inches deep. But if you are going to have it standing up and not laying on its side, then you're looking at 36.6 inches high and 24 inches wide. And it weighs in at a whopping 187.3 pounds. So it's not a small subwoofer and it's not a light subwoofer. So keep that in mind if you are going to order one. You're probably going to want to have at least one other person on hand to help you move it around. So for those of you that are familiar with the Tonewinner subwoofers, they do have that LCD display on the back. And yes, it is upside down on purpose so that when you're looking down on the subwoofer from the back, because most of you are going to have the back of the subwoofer against the wall, it's going to be right side up for you looking down on it. So that is why it's upside down. That's not a mistake. They did that on purpose. But it also supports the Tonewinner subwoofer app. So you can control all of the settings and the parameters from that app, which is incredibly handy from the comfort of your own chair. So like I already said, this is the same driver that's being used in the D6000. There's just two of them in the D8000 Pro. So you have a cast aluminum basket and you have a treated paper cone, which has a 3-inch voice coil, and the driver itself weighs in at 22.25 pounds. So you have two of these, so you have 44.5 pounds of drivers in this subwoofer, which helps account for some of that weight. That covers the basic specs for the D8000 Pro. Now let's move on to the D9000. So the D9000 is using a single 18-inch driver, which is a new driver for Tonewinner. They just developed this driver for this subwoofer specifically. The claimed frequency range on the D9000 is 11 Hertz to 200 Hertz. It's using an amplifier that's very similar to the D8000 Pro, so you're looking at 1500 watts RMS into 3 ohms. They are claiming 9000 watts peak, but again, take that with a grain of salt because that's just going to be very brief bursts. But that's what they're claiming is 9,000 watts of peak power. So as I'm sure you guys can see, it is a ported enclosure with those 6 ports, but you can run the subwoofer in sealed mode. So they do include port bungs for you to plug those ports, and then you can either use the LCD display on the back or the app to change the subwoofer into sealed mode. And just like the D8000 Pro, the D9000 is a massive subwoofer as well. So you're looking at 24.8 inches wide, 32.75 inches high, and 27.3 inches deep. And although the D8000 Pro is a hefty subwoofer, the D9000 Pro is a little bit heavier yet at 191.8 pounds. And because the amplifiers on the D8000 Pro and D9000 are very similar, other than the fact that they have different peak watt numbers, the D9000 does have that LCD display on the amplifier as well, which is upside down on purpose so that when you're looking down on it. And it also does support the Tonewinner subwoofer app, so you can change all the settings and the parameters from the comfort of your own chair on your phone using that app. The 18-inch driver is also using a cast aluminum basket, but it is using a larger voice voice coil at 4.5 inches. The cone material that they use on the 18-inch is the same as the 15-inch, so you're looking at a treated paper cone. So with the 18-inch driver, they did up their game with the X-Max, so you're looking at a 26mm X-Max on the 18-inch, whereas the 15-inch driver is using a 15mm X-Max. And the 18-inch driver is very hefty and robust, weighing in at 48.7 pounds. And I'm sure you guys are all wondering what the price of these subwoofers are going to be. So currently, at the time of the recording of this video anyway, the price for the D8000 Pro is going to be $2,999 Canadian dollars, which works out to about $2,200 US dollars, and the price for the D9000 18-inch is going to be $3,199 Canadian dollars, which works out to about $2,300 US dollars. So when it comes to a class of subwoofer that's high performance or high output, these are on the more budget side of that category of subwoofer. I know there's going to be some of you coming down in the comments below saying, how is $3,000 or $3,199 Canadian dollars budget? I'm not saying that these are budget subwoofers compared to all the subwoofers on the market, because obviously there's going to be subwoofers out there that are far less expensive than this. But when it comes to high performance or high output subwoofers like these subwoofers are, they are on the budget side of that category of subwoofer. So a perfect example of this is going to be the SVS PB16 Ultra. This is a subwoofer that a lot of you know about. That's why I'm using it as an example here. It's currently priced at $4,900, or I think sometimes even $4,999 here in Canada. I'm not sure what the price is in US, but that is about $2,000 more than both of these subwoofers. So the D8000 Pro and the D9000 are both going to outperform the PB16 Ultra, and that's just physics, guys. I'm not saying that to insult SVS, so the SVS guys, please don't come in the comments and start attacking me. This is just physics. It's math. The D8000 Pro has two 15-inch drivers and similar wattage, and it has a large cabinet as well, so it's going to outperform the PB16 Ultra. Maybe not in all aspects, I'm not sure, I haven't compared the numbers, but it is going to outperform it generally speaking. The D9000 has a larger driver with a decent 26mm X-Max, as well as similar power to the PB16 Ultra, and it also has a large cabinet to deal with. So again, it's just numbers, it's just math, it's just physics. It's going to outperform the PB16 Ultra. Again, maybe not in all aspects, I'm not sure, I haven't compared the numbers, but generally speaking, it's going to outperform it, and it's doing that at $2,000 less. So that's enough about the specs and the comparisons. So let's talk about these subwoofers now. So the first thing I want to talk about is that these things are beasts. And I mean that in a literal sense. They're both big and they're both heavy. Getting them into my place was difficult. Yes, I've moved heavier subwoofers and heavier things into my home theater before, but these are up there as far as weight and size goes. They are beasts. So keep that in mind if you are going to be purchasing these. Get a second person. But what I wanted to point out here is that they actually include handles. So both of these subwoofers have handles on either end. So it is incredibly helpful if you have a second person to move these subwoofers around. You both grab onto the handles and you can move it around a lot easier versus trying to get a grip on the bottom of the subwoofer, on the sides of the subwoofer. So kudos to Tonewinner for including handles. With that said, there's going to be some of you out there that don't like the handles. Of course, it's not an aesthetically pleasing thing. They do look nice, but they're pretty basic. So you have a black ash vinyl wrap on both of these subwoofers, and they're only available currently in that black ash vinyl wrap. And then you have those two handles. So there's going to be some of you that's a polarizing thing. You won't like the sight of the handles. But again, these are high performance subwoofers that are most likely going to be used in either even a club setup or like a party type setup or in a home theater. And in home theaters, often the subwoofers are either hidden behind a screen or they're hidden behind in the back of the room. And again, a lot of people that are building home theaters aren't really focusing on the look of their subwoofer. They're looking at the performance of the subwoofer. So this is a subwoofer that can get you a lot of performance at an inexpensive price. And of course, there's going to be some drawbacks to that. And one of those is aesthetics. You're not going to get a nice fancy gloss finish on this subwoofer because they're keeping the price point low and the performance high. So what you're going to get, I feel, is a well-built subwoofer. Like I said, they're very hefty, they're very solid. So I think that they are well built. So I know I've been focusing on the fact that they've kept the price inexpensive and they kept the performance high, but that doesn't mean that they cut all the corners. So they are still using the LCD display on the back of the amplifier, but even better, they are including the subwoofer app support with these subwoofers. So again, even though they're keeping the price as low as they can and they're keeping the performance as high as they can, they still included that subwoofer app, which is incredibly handy, guys. I can't stress that enough, actually, because these are so big and they're so heavy. Once you have it pushed up against the wall, you're not always going to want to pull it out to make adjustments. Trust me on that. It's a pain. I even use carpet sliders, and it's still a bit of a pain for me to pull these out from the wall and adjust them. And that just goes for any hefty, big, high-performance subwoofer. They're going to be heavy. They're going to be awkward. So that app is really helpful and really handy for adjusting these subwoofers without having to pull them away from the wall. So I'm really thankful that Tonewinner included the app support on these subwoofers. Like I said, it saves your back. Okay, so yes, they're big and yes, they're heavy, and I do feel that you're getting a pretty well-built subwoofer here, but how's the performance? So I got these subwoofers put in the front end of my room, so I had one on the left and one in the front right-hand corner. Right now, I currently have it as the D9000, or the 18-inch in the right-hand corner, and the D8000 Pro dual 15-inch on the left-hand side of my system. And I plugged them in, and I didn't really do much. I kind of just plugged them in and turned them on just to see what their performance was like. I didn't even balance them or level match them. And guys, these subwoofers give you that performance that I've been talking about. When you're talking about a high performance or high output subwoofers, these are definitely that. So when you play something like Blade Runner 2049, the opening scene, my room was so energized. Everything was shaking. They just put a smile on my face. Plain and simple. It brought me back to, and I'm not saying that these are just as good as JTR, have the same output. I haven't compared them, but it brought me back to that memory of my first experience with something like the JTR RS2 subwoofers. They're just so powerful. There's just something about a high output subwoofer like this that you can't really put into words versus something smaller like a 12-inch or even a single 15-inch subwoofer. They're just on the next level. And like I said, it just brought me back to the JTR RS2 days when I had those subwoofers. Everything was energized. Everything was shaking. And surprisingly, they actually worked quite well together. I did do some quick measurements on them, and they were summing quite nicely. Even though one is an 18-inch driver and one's a dual 15-inch driver, they still summed quite nicely in my room. And with running both of these subwoofers, the output is just intense, is I guess the best way to put it. It's violent. Your room is violently shaking. The output is intense. And that's where the value really lies in these subwoofers, is the output and the performance. Once I got these things going, it was just a pleasure. It was a lot of fun. I played, like I said, the Blade Runner 2049, but I also played the race scene of Ready Player One. And again, just everything is shaking. And they have so much tactile response, you almost don't even need bass shakers. I have the Croson actuators under my chairs that do vibrate, and I turned them off just to see what kind of tactile response I would get from these subwoofers. And they were shaking my chairs significantly, to the point where it almost feels like you do have a bass shaker in your chair, until you turn them back on. Then you realize, okay, they do add a little bit of tactile response to the chairs, but with them off, you're still getting a ton of that. And that is what you get with a high performance, high output subwoofer like these, is that violent shaking, that extreme bass. And that's what I would consider both of these subwoofers. They are extreme. So if you're looking for that extreme bass, that violent, shaking, powerful bass, both of these subwoofers are going to get you that. So if you are trying to base, I guess, your purchasing decision off of this overview video, you're going to get a little bit more low end out of the D9000, maybe a dB.5 or 2 dB on the low end. But when it comes to the D8000 Pro, the benefit of that, I feel it does punch a little bit harder. It's got a little bit more sharper, harder hitting chest thump. I don't know if that's because it's got two smaller drivers versus the one 18-inch driver in the D9000, but that was my impression, is it had a little bit more punch, a little bit better punch for gunshots and that sort of thing from the D8000 Pro. So I guess, like I said, if you're trying to make a purchasing decision off of this video, those are the two main differences that I noticed right off the bat. So if you guys are interested in finding out more about these subwoofers, I've dropped links to both of them down in the description below. But make sure that you stay tuned for the reviews, because I will show you actual output numbers in my room. I did measure both of these subwoofers in my room, so I will show you guys those numbers and show you the true output of these things. But take it from me, they are beastly. They are approaching 120 dB at certain frequencies, so there's a lot of output here. Hence why I was so thrilled when I got them plugged in, and it was just violently shaking my room. Once you start approaching that 120 dB mark for peaks on certain frequencies, that's when you really start to experience that violent bass that I was talking about with subwoofers like the JTR RS2s and even these subwoofers. And I'm sure there's other subwoofers out there that provide that. That's not what I'm saying, that these are the only ones, but they do it at a very inexpensive price. So I'm really happy to see these subwoofers enter the market. Tonewinner, I think, did a great job on the performance of these subwoofers. So keep them in mind if you are looking for a high performance or high output subwoofer. Like I said, I've dropped links down in the description below. Make sure that you subscribe and tick the bell icon if you do, and please take just one short second to hit that like button so you can stay tuned for the review videos of these subwoofers. Remember to enjoy your systems. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.